Thank you for listening tonight. We're doing a series of shows called A Discussion of Awakening, and tonight we have two wonderful, beautiful souls on, Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, and Sierra Neblina on the line, calling in both from out west, and I'm in Florida. And welcome to the show, ladies. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So the idea behind this is, just for the listeners listening, is that we're going to have a discussion over the next hour about things as far as awakening is happening, because obviously there's a lot of things happening on the planet right now, and even though most of us can probably feel something, we might be going through some things that we're confused about or not sure of, and so we're going to be discussing on that over the next hour. Maybe we can help people out that are listening to help them along their journey as far as awakening and the shifting of the planet. And so without further ado, I think we should probably just get started. So one of the things I was thinking about just before we came on the show is currently over the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, I've been really feeling, and I don't know if you guys are experiencing this as well, or seeing the symptoms in other people, is that people are getting sick, or they're getting chest pains, or they're getting just physical manifestations on their body, and it's been particularly in the last few weeks. Now, there's a lot of theories about the way it is and what's going on. However, what are some things that you guys do that help, and maybe we'll start with Sierra. Well, what are some things, Sierra, that you do that when you go through those moments and you know it's ascension happening, or there might be somebody trying to manipulate your energy or an energy doing that, what are some things you do to help bring yourself back into balance and keep yourself from going through that?
Well, I think it's really, really important to, as we go through this ascension and the energy is shifting and so on, to really bring one's attention to your health and well-being. I think more so now than any other time, we've had to face the fact that we've got a lot of toxins in our environment. And so the thing that I do is make sure that I'm taking care of my health and well-being by balancing my energy. So if something starts to happen, just to answer your question, I check in with my chakras. I see if there's something particularly pulling in one chakra or the other, then that gives me an indicator of if this person is, say, if there's an irritant, like there's somebody that I come across and they're like really angry with me or coming at me from a downward spiral type energy, I first check and look into my energy field and see if there's anything in my chakras that is reacting to what they're creating, or if it is literally them just experiencing the very loud volume of this process that we're going through. Things might be very tough for them, and so they're sort of taking it out in this direction. And that's been happening a lot because some people are really being challenged to handle all of the energy and everything that has been happening in the last while. And so I find that more people are quicker to temper or taking their frustrations out on one another. And so what I do is just breathe, pull myself in, balance my chakras, check in to my guides and to into the situation of, is this a karmic thing? Is this something I should even engage? I've had several incidents happen recently, even with some pretty amazing light workers, and they got challenged in their own energy field and were, lashed out in one way or the other. And I was able to step back and acknowledge that it wasn't anything that I needed to engage in, but maybe had to put my foot down of how the energy I should handle the energy, or I should handle the interaction. I think that's a longer answer to a pretty simple question, but that's what I do.
No, it's okay. That's totally fine. Laura, what do you do when you're going through that, or what are some things you teach other people?
Well, I just really settle into my reaction, and I just pay attention to that reaction. And I mean, the most important thing for me is to ask myself, is this an old wound that's reopening that I need to work on and heal, or is this a blatant attack just to weaken me? And if that's the case, how can I match it with my own energetic, or override it. And when I say match it, I mean like if I'm being attacked, it's not that I would attack back, but I would match it with a boundary. If I need to overcome something because it's challenging me or bringing my energy down or producing a symptom, then it's like, okay, well, there's resources within to tap into that, can overcome it. Because if we think about it, we have so much potential that has been untapped. Our DNA potential, just the parts of our brains we're not using, the multidimensional layers that we haven't expanded into yet. So I always see it as an opportunity to reach those places, to have it, kind of spur on like a greater strength and a greater expansion. Because once we get in touch with those greater energies, then just like the immune system and how it deals with disease, it wipes it out. But we wouldn't be challenged to increase the capacity of our immune system if it wasn't initially challenged. So I just look at it as, okay, it's serving me on some level. It's just, being conscious. And like Sierra said, just, every situation isn't necessarily going to be the same. And, just to kind of just ask oneself the right questions to get to the bottom of, why one is reacting the way that they are, and then, kind of take it from there. And it's just a big balancing act, really, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're in this really good space, and then of course you're challenged in your shadow side is hit, or your reactor button is whatever button is hit on you, and then you just stop and you go, And I know a lot of the physical manifestations that people are having. I'm getting a lot of people with back problems and migraines lately. And I've been actually telling them to get out. I've actually been taking them outside and having them touch trees and walk barefooted in the ground, to get connected back to that frequency of the, Mother Nature. And I'm finding that is really, helping them and myself, to get kind of grounded back into the space. And it's been super, super helpful. And I think I agree with you guys. It's like a balancing act, and it's it can obviously be very challenging at times. There's some theories, and I want to throw this out there, and this is this is something I'd never heard of. I've of course heard of HAARP and stuff like that, but I'd never heard of an organization called CERN before. And is it possible that what's happening, especially and I know it's also, Laura, I know it's Mercury's in retrograde right now, that is kind of what's been happening, a combination of ascension symptoms as well as a manipulation type of thing, along with planetary alignments, that's happening to people right now? Because I'm actually seeing people acting way out of character as opposed to what they normally would, and that was quite interesting to me. Like people arguing, over things that are very minute, these are people that just don't argue. They're usually at peace with themselves. Is there? I guess we'll start off with Laura. Is there? I know you've talked about this in some of your lectures and stuff like that. Mind manipulation and that kind of stuff. Is it possible that's kind of what we're going through? Is a combination of both? Ascension and
yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is what the ascension is all about. I mean, we have like frequency senses in our DNA, and to move through those layers is to move through programmings and blockages that kind of stop us in our tracks. And then when we are stopped in our tracks, then we find, there's traps, there's manipulations that want to hook us into not pursuing movement through those blockages, but instead, kind of taking the maybe the propaganda in, or the fear in, or the anxiety, or really kind of buying into like what is being presented to us as the trajectory that the human race is going towards, and not being creative and expansive enough to reach the real truth of what's available. And so I think in those moments where we're getting manipulation from one side, and ascension symptoms or indications that we're moving into higher territory, that, we have a choice in front of us, to move through those barriers, or to, butt our head against the wall and turn back around and, go into the trap. And I think it's all a part of the same package, just in the same way that I see light and dark working, not the organic light and dark of like, the womb or the higher consciousness seeds, but the polarity of, and I don't even want to say good and evil, but if we look at it like archons, there's archangels, there's archdemons, and we're going to be challenged by both, but they both assist us. But the ultimate goal is integration, to understand that one can help us to reach the other to a certain degree. And the same thing with the manipulation. If the manipulation is happening, it pushes us to go forward in the ascension. And if we feel, the ascension happening, then we might, all of a sudden find ourselves targeted. So, it's all a part of the same package. But if we, work with it and allow ourselves to purify our own shadow, we're going to move through those barriers. And this is why people are acting out and having a difficult time, because there is this desire to purge, and there is a lot of internalized energy that wants to come up to the surface like a splinter, but it can feel somewhat out of control because two forces are coming at the person. One is to reach the higher road or to be in more integrity and more balance, and the other one is to stay stuck in programmings and to stay limited. And so there's this tug of war going on, and so the consciousness of the being is like not really sure how to handle it. But if we step back enough and ground ourselves and, take those deep breaths, we can use the dark elements or the attacks as a tool to expand us, and we can use the symptoms of expansion to remind us also that we need, to protect ourselves and to, exercise more discernment so that we can shield ourselves from those elements getting into our space.
So in some ways, it's almost like like on a super consciousness level, consciousness is creating all these different aspects for us to ascend or, go through these ascension. Obviously, on the surface, on a physical three-dimensional world, it looks like good and evil, but it's more like archonids and angels, like you were saying, and they're an aspect of us growing, and like a friction, so to speak, to help us. The arches become our opportunity. The angels become our the energy, I guess, to boost us. Maybe I'm off track here a little bit, but it just kind of seems like, is that kind of what you're saying in a sense? We can use both aspects to grow.
Definitely. Like if something's plugging into me, then there must be something that I need to strengthen in myself to keep it from plugging into me. And if it's something, positive as well, sometimes when you get to like an elated state or you feel really high, sometimes, there's that feeling of, coming down hard, like a reality check or something. And so I think it all just really serves us. And the end result is, more balance, more neutrality, and a strengthening aura and a stronger connection with Mother Earth. And that all these different forces can help us to achieve that if our perceptions are in alignment with the inevitability that Spirit is going to always step forth and our soul essence is going to give us the insights and the inner wisdom to know how to tackle it. So that's why externalizing it all too much can cause us to lose ourselves, but going inside ourselves to understand the nature of how we operate is where we can fine-tune our navigational skills.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. Sierra, what is your perspective on this question?
I think that everything that Laura said was extremely valid, and I was just sitting here listening to her speaking just a moment ago, and I was drawn to that, as we're going along this walk, as this ascension process, shedding the old, shedding all of the mind control, shedding all of the power structures that have been put in place, finding our own divinity, remembering who we are, and so on. I think people want to complicate the process more than what it is. I find that the people that struggle the most are the ones that are more hesitant to do their work, their inner work, like what Laura just referenced. If something comes up and it plugs into me, that's an opportunity. It's always an opportunity to look and to become more free and to free yourself up more if you get reactivated or activated by someone's actions or something that happens in your mirror out there in the world. And I think that it is simple as really being mindful and being willing to look at it at all the different levels of how is this, what is this, how is it affecting me, is this another cycle, is it another opportunity for me to shed the next layer of what's happening in my mirror, in my world, in my field. And the more that we are willing to really buckle down and confront the things that confront us, we have more of an opportunity to create space for ourselves so that we gain momentum. I don't want everyone to think, I'd like to encourage people that the more that you're willing to just buckle down for a short period of time and really dig into the things that are confronting you, especially during this particular time, the easier it gets. And you'll be going along and then maybe something trips you up a little bit and you stop and you go, oh, okay, this is a teacher, this is an opportunity. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'm totally on point with you both. I know that often at times the shadow aspect of us wants to cover things up or it wants to avoid things, and if it's not directly affecting them, at least in that immediate on the surface, sometimes we tend to not. We don't necessarily see it until it's slaps us right in the face, and the universe has a wonderful way of bringing those things right into our perspective to say, hey, remember me? We talked about 10 years ago. It's time for us to look at this again. So, it's kind of a silly little analogy, but it's the truth. I've had things surface that I've thought I had dealt with, and they surface. Little things will happen, and you just have to face it at the moment. And it doesn't make you a weak person. It actually makes you a very strong person to face it. So.
Yeah, I think what the point, and another thing as you were speaking that came up for me too, is when we find that we are being challenged by somebody, instead of being like, oh, there you are again, and getting upset and disappointed like we should have been able to do this work and clear this to this point. Right now, there's such deep level work that people are being asked to do in this ascension process. And there are many, many layers, like peeling an onion, to what seems like the same type of pattern or cycle. But as you start to get nearer to the core of the issue and you do the final release, there's just so much inspiration, so much more room for passion, so much more room for putting in everything that empowers you to continue to move past the point of being an effect of everything in your life to the point of being empowered and starting to be in a place of creation. And so that's really important.
I think it's actually very interesting because all three of us, and not just us, everybody out there has had some kind of place where they've been at. I've been doing this show for almost 5 years now, and every single person I've talked to came from a place of real despair and hurt, and then they rose above it and they found happiness in their life, and then almost every single one of them, even years later, had those old things surface. And Laura, I remember the first interview you did with me, and we talked about before everything really started happening. I remember you said you were actually just laying somewhere, right, and you were practically in tears because things were not going the way you wanted them to before everything started to work for you. And Sierra, obviously, we know your journey with all the health issues and stuff like that, and me losing my entire livelihood and career, several years ago. Everybody has this story. It just looks different, on the surface. Yeah. And I think what we're talking about is that these things can surface later on. And I feel like that the ego actually shelves it for a while until you're able to face whatever it is that's new. A new aspect or a new layer. It's like, I think it's like, what's the movie where he says an ogre is like an onion. You have to peel it back. I cannot think. Shrek. It's very similar to that. You guys agree with that? Is that, we are like an onion. We peel back layers, and we're trying to get to the surface or to that core of spirit within us.
Mm.
Laura.
Yeah, definitely. I think the times, that I, was really falling apart. And it wasn't so much things going my way on a personal level, although that was, I got real used to that. It was not going to happen. But just, in the on the planet, and just the things that we witness, and just how that can take a toll on us and our faith and the direction everything's going in for the human race. I never lost faith. I just had to have like a lot of moments of release, and then I just peeled back the layers and realized that, if I have a dream or an intention and I'm consistent with it, I can kind of let go and find my inner peace and trust that everything's going to fall into place. There's going to be synchronicities and opportunities that fall into place, because the more I hold on, the more I allow it all to kind of crush me, the less able I am to manifest the most desired results. So I just ended up kind of having an epiphany where, your dreams know who they are. They're not going to leave you. And the focus is there. That's never going to go away. Just let go and just trust the flow and embrace the processes that come up. And I did, and everything did fall into place. My breakdowns were usually after moving a ton of times and feeling, just the endless attacks, and just, the exhaustion of, trying to raise 2 kids, and, just really feeling, very isolated. But they were very cleansing tears and purifying tears, not really victim tears. But it was all wrapped up in the prayer and the hope and the desire that, people would begin to. I just realized that, holding on too much or wanting something too much can become a block, just as much as being in denial or having your head in the sand. And I realized, that's an excess and deficiency factor just as much as anything else. And so I found that center point of just acceptance for where things are right now. And I just reconfirmed certain things. I like to say, putting instructions into the internal GPS, and then just listening to the inner voice tell you when to turn right and left. And that's that little voice that you can count on. And you don't need to get too lost in the mental loops. It's very organic, and it's just a part of how we are as creator beings. And yeah, the synchronicities guided me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think that's where we're all at some, if we get to that. And I honestly think, that we are actually listening all along, and we're listening to that guidance. We get into these moments, or where we're maybe not listening as much, or we really are, and we get too hard on ourselves at moments and say, oh, I missed that opportunity. And really, probably you needed to go to this direction because it came, like we were talking originally. It's an opportunity, to gain more discernment or wisdom or whatever. And I think that we're all just on this perfectly fine path. We're just growing and evolving. And of course, the dream is always there. It's like you said, the dream's not going anywhere. It's always going to be there. It has a momentum that builds into it. Sierra, what's your perspective on that as far as working coming from a hard place and working towards something and
I was just contemplating that. Yeah, I'm still. I was just contemplating that. What I like to do is like feel out into the consciousness as you're asking these questions and kind of feel where people are. And I feel that there was a really tough period energetically. I think it was like within the last couple of weeks. I think it was a few days ago. I woke up and I just felt the most intense sadness. And there was, I think it was on Friday or something like that. It felt like there was this intensity in the consciousness of people really struggling to stay positive. And I know that it's not the most incredible tools that there are available for us are the most simple. And I find that when we are being challenged at every turn, when it seems like nothing is going the right way or how we're intending it, or it's just a bunch of tiny little irritants during the day, what I like to do is take a big step back and focus on the positive because our ego mind or our shadow self likes to grab a hold of the tiniest little things and throw us off of one of our great paths. And so focusing on things that are positive, like today I woke up and I was doing a lot of clearing and transmuting of the energy I'd been feeling over the last week. And I look up in the sky, there's a beautiful Colorado sky, and it's completely clear. And then I come back in and I go back out again, and the sky is just full of chemtrails. And for me, it's my partner in contrast. It constantly challenges my happy place when I step outside and I see all the things that they're putting in the air. And then I stopped this morning and I just went, you know what? It is a really high spray day, and it's something that I'm particularly invested in having stopped here on the planet. And then what I did is I shifted myself into a place where I looked up into the sky, someplace in the near future, and there wasn't those things there. And what I did is I grabbed a hold of my gratitude, like this huge opening in my heart of, wow, it's gone, it's no longer happening. And this is a trick that we can use to help pulling the future, what we want to see our planet look like, the peace, the things like CERN and HARP and the chemtrails. Literally spending some time in giving gratitude for the near day, the day in the near future, that it is no longer going to be there. Focusing positively, even if I have to just stop and be like, okay, what am I grateful for right now in this moment? Because if I go down that rabbit hole, then that triggers all of the patterns and all of the reactions and the same mind control stuff that keeps us disempowered.
Yeah.
And so
well, I think you're talking about
line.
Yeah. I think you're talking about something really profound there. I think we're all talking about that, because when you go into gratitude, you no longer become separated or you don't have that tension in your heart or in your body, and so then you allow yourself to go into flow with it and keep at peace. And I really think, I'll go to both of you to talk about this. I think if our frequency goes into that turmoil, because I'd studied so many things as far as disclosure for many years, because I just kept on looking at things and going, wow, it would just hurt my heart. Even as far back as 9/11, when I watched it, I thought to myself, there's something wrong here. This is not what they're telling us. And what it did is it hurt my heart, just really hurt all my energy to see it. And then something hit me one day, as if I just stay level as far as peace and practice that frequency-wise, I'm not contributing to the turmoil or the separation. I think if we're talking about mind manipulation, that's kind of what they want. They want us all to be separated and upset and in reaction to each other, Republican, Democrat, all that kind of stuff, gay, straight, all that kind of stuff. It just, and then that keeps us in reaction. How do you both feel about that? I mean, I think that's a part of the mind manipulation, is that they keep us in opposites of each other instead of in flow with each other.
Interesting. It's really interesting. I wanted to follow up on that thought of, now we can start to get into a different kind of conversation of resonant frequency. And as we're starting to go through remembering, we as a culture, as a people on the planet, start to go through this remembering that there's something more, and then we start to undo these patterns. And as we start to fall into what I call the natural flow or resonant frequency, we start to emit a very different pattern. I like to tell people that this is a schoolhouse yard that we came down to, and it has a very specific set of rules, which we have forgotten. It's been, taught out of our culture. It's been masked. It's been taken away as far as truths and different things like that. But frequency is an incredibly important part of this ascension process, and vibration and harmonics and so on. And when someone falls into a resonant frequency, as I understand, it is it's actually, first of all, a wave of frequency that can be scientifically measured. And it creates harmony with all the other frequencies around you, the land, Gaia, nature, and so on. And it puts you in a place, from what I understand, to be able to move from agitation or being caught up in our cycles into a place of being able to create. Because when we're in our resonant frequency, we are in the place of nothingness, which then gives way to everything.
So, Laura, what's your perspective on that as far as like frequency and keeping ourselves at peace and in balance during things that are thrown at us, I guess?
I always like to keep my attention on the bigger picture and just our potential, and the fact that reality is fluid, it's not fixed, and I like to just kind of keep myself clear of too much of the externals, because then it starts to tell me things that might trip me up, that might not be in resonance with my inner truth. I like to hear it to just sort of see what my inner sounding board has to say. It either agrees or it might feel challenged. It might feel triggered, like a hurt. The thing with the balance of the masculine and feminine is it brings in the miracle energy. Balance is the most beautiful thing, because a balanced body is a healthy body. That's how we access, the immune system. And even if the body's not healthy, we access the immune system when we find balance within our consciousness, just in our thought forms, where we're not fearing the illness, we're not fearing the outcome, but we're really listening to ourselves and going deep inside to understand what the roots are, while we might feel just, the concern that isn't at the level of fear that kind of keeps us on our toes, because we know that the body's sounding the alarm and we have to address it immediately or else it might get worse. So there is that pressure to deal with it, but to curb the fear is to go inside and to ask ourselves, well, where does this originate? Because when we're in balance, just in our own thought forms, and we get the energy right, the physical has no choice but to manifest what the energy is holding. And that's the thing with physical matter. Energy comes first, and then the physical responds. And so if we can work behind the scenes of ourselves when we're dealing with stuff and find a perspective that feels good and isn't too polarized on, the over-idealism or the, over-anxiety or fear, and we allow ourselves to be cautious yet open and expansive, and we just find that middle ground, I feel we have access to just all the higher levels of, the higher dimensions, our healing power, and the miracle energy. And the thing is, when there's imbalance, that's when the negative ego tends to come out, and that ends up running the show. And it's either leaning towards insecurity and unworthiness, or it's leaning towards arrogance and self-righteousness. And so, it's just a matter of checking ourselves and understanding that our life experience is going to give us everything that we need in order to, know what we have to work on. We have to ask ourselves, what's the quality of our relationship with ourselves? How is our health? How is our relationship with our significant other? Or if we're single, how is our relationship with life? And just everything. We're in relationship to everything. And so everything in the outer world teaches us about the quality of our inner relationship with ourselves. And I think we get as much information as we could possibly need just in any given day, just observing, and we know exactly what we need to do just based on those observations. And once we get a grip on it, we can decide, okay, can we handle this on our own, or do we need support? Well, what's the most healthy form of support? The kind that's going to tell us what we have and how it's going to play out, or the type of support that helps us to become empowered, and the type of support that helps us to understand ourselves on a deeper level, And this is the one place where we do actually have free will. We might feel like our rights are being compromised and we don't have ultimate free will, but we do have free will when it comes to how we navigate our paths. And when we choose unity, the unity of our own inner masculine and feminine, our own light and dark, and our own right and left brain, and we allow those polarities to be in a dance with each other instead of a power struggle, I think that we naturally notice, or nature has, just everything that manifests from that point on gives us an indication that, wow, we're balancing our reality. And in actual fact, it's helping the world. And it's rippling out because we are empowering that divine blueprint. instead of all the distortions and programmings that we were born into, which is, the root of the problem to begin with. And so it takes that radical approach of, really paying attention to what life has to teach us. And I think the minute we get a grip on that, we know how to, make empowered decisions.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I think we're talking a lot about perspective in our thoughts. I think you bring up a really good point. You bring up energy comes first, and then the reaction to it comes after that. And our reaction continues to create or co-create the energy that flows to us. And so I'm thinking about perspective changes everything as far as how it goes, or our paradigm. Some people call it the paradigm of how they see the world. And as you're talking about choice or what's going on in the inner world, it makes me think of a book I read years ago by a guy named Viktor Frankl, and he mentions that the last human freedom is the power to choose how we feel inside. And nothing that can never be taken away from us. We can never have that choice to, our feelings taken away for how we see the world. So I was just thinking about that in perspective, because if our perspective is, everything is working against us and we're a victim of the circumstances, then we're always going to have that. But if it changes to being in flow and looking at opportunities and growing and always self-assessing and all that kind of stuff, then we're going to have opportunities to go that way. And Sierra, I guess we'll go to you to kind of, talk about this a little bit. With perspective, I'm going to give you an example. Like over the last couple of months, I've gone through a new lesson where I was almost pushing too hard and wanting to do things is exactly what Laura talked about earlier. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to do what I enjoy, which is, creating things and interacting with people and connecting with people and doing my radio show, which I love. And all of a sudden, all the opportunities started to open up on more levels than one. Have you ever experienced this in your own life, Sierra? And and how could what are some things you could share with the audience as far as your change in perspective, shifted things for you, at least frequency and attraction-wise, energy-wise?
I find myself really in the practice of that often, from the little details in my life to the larger goals or intentions that I have set. But a really good one recently would be I had visualized this opportunity and worked to create purchasing a land in southern Colorado, and then my vision was, this is really amazing. I'm going to move on to there. This was at the beginning of last year. Clear it up, clear it off, get my RV set up, protect that, build this, do that. And I had this clear vision of what I wanted to do. And I worked toward that vision, and I worked very hard and physically arduous and in it day in and day out. And I run out of time, and winter came faster, and I wasn't as prepared. And I thought, and I was really being confronted because I was being very hard on myself that I didn't get it done. Then I started reaching out to my community, and it was interesting because it really challenged me, because I really felt like if I really needed to, I'd wait till the last minute or when I really needed it, and I'll reach out to my community. I know people will just be there for me to help me get this finished up. And I was really shocked when that didn't happen. And so I was confronted with this old pattern, this old belief system of I'm not worthy, people don't love me, and I'm not being supported in my work. And so it kind of threw me into a bit of a tailspin in that I had this really hard-edge expectation of accomplishing something within a certain time frame, and I found, wow, this is an old way of being. It's an old strong suit that I have where I'm going to say I'm going to do it, I'm going to get it done come heck or high water, and I'm just, it's no matter what, it's going to happen. And this comes from my days of building multi-million-dollar homes and stuff as a builder back in the day. And I find that when I'm relearning that when I have a goal, that's an organic goal, and I'm going to work inside of synchronicities and inside of what my ultimate intention and outcome is, and let go of the details, because ultimately it turns out that the things that I was so hard on myself for a couple of months for not getting done, getting some solar put up or getting a particular building built because I didn't think I could survive at 20 or 40 below in my RV, which I did just fine. I had imposed all this stress, this extra stress and this undue, unneeded stress on myself and instead of getting in the flow. So what I did is I just started to have this conversation about I don't have to have it done in a certain amount of time. I'm going to start focusing on, I've been working basically almost for 2 years up to the point of this last winter, and my intention was to just get it to a place where I could let it be safe, be warm, and continue my book and finish it for, a summer, spring release. And so when I actually got myself into the place where I was letting myself enjoy all of the work, all the intense work that I had done up to that point, my reality started to shift. My experience of life started to shift when I started to focus on the positive things. And then I could bring another point to the work that I'm doing right now with my autobiography. I got to a point where I was so excited and all the challenges of what it takes to talk about your life and then get it into a place where anybody who's reading it can understand the perspective, the different perspectives, and then going through and thinking, wow, I thought I had done the work on this because this is up again for me, and taking the time to put it down, to get into my place of meditation and my place of connection, and to look and see where I can let go of more of whatever it is that's challenging me. And so I got to a place where I was so excited, it's almost done, and then I had this thing happen where I was listening to Corey, good SGET, give a testimony, and it brought up so many members for me that just came flooding back all at once, and it really baffled me, and it kind of took me out a little bit. I had to go back into the work again, back into looking at what is hooking me, what is triggering me, how do I resolve this, and it was a little bit trickier because it was a lot of inner child work. And then I got done with that, and I was so excited. I'm all written up. I'm really close to releasing the book. It's so great. And I go to my publicist, and she reads it, and she's like, I think you need a rewrite. And I was like, oh, my goodness. And I'm getting a little bit more facile now instead of just the world is falling and why can't I and why isn't it done? Because this Virgo aspect of me is like perfection, perfection, perfection. And I just have to let go again and step back and focus on the positive, focus on the good, focus on what is going to propel me forward. And lately, my mantra is focus on my passion. What is my passion? Follow my passion. And that is the thing that ignites me and sheds all of the negative and low, fear-based cycles or things that get triggered in me. So that's a couple of examples of what I did. I just had to step back and just focus on the positive and stop being so hard on myself. I think we can be incredibly hard on ourselves.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Laura, what's your perspective?
Can you just reframe the question again?
Okay. I think what we were talking about is perspective, and and I'd given an example of even Sarah was giving examples of we kind of go along, and if we switch our perspective a little bit, it changes everything for us. And it kind of stemmed from what you had said earlier.
Yes.
When you were talking about to the inner world and frequency and stuff like that. And
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, perspective. I mean, we are artists, and perception to me is like dipping into paint on the palette, and mixing different recipes of those paints to produce something. And same thing with food. And I mean, we're creative beings, but there's always a byproduct to creativity because something always needs to be cleaned up. I mean, we accept that in the physical world. When we create a meal, we have to clean up afterwards and wash the dishes. And our perspective or our creativity can get overloaded with perceptions that don't serve us when we don't keep up with the energetic maintenance. If there's too much accumulation, we get stressed, we get overwhelmed, we feel, at a breaking point. But we don't often step back and ask ourselves, maybe we have emotional overload. Maybe we need to wash our emotional dishes. Maybe we need to, organize our mental thoughts, because we know if we live in that sort of physical environment, it attracts flies and germs and bacteria and fungus. So it's not going to be any different, in these other systems of our bodies. And so I think perception can work at its most optimal when we are paying attention to energy maintenance on a daily basis. And just to sort of, I really love what you guys have been saying and what you just said, Sierra. It's awesome to be able to push the boundaries of our comfort zone. And it doesn't mean, going into something that goes against our morals or, doesn't feel in alignment with integrity just because other people are doing it. That's not what I mean, but I mean just like comfort level. Like a person having kids who might just freak out at the sight of all the messes that might be made and the crayon drawing on the wall. And, it's like you have no choice but to sort of find a little bit more acceptance and a little bit more humor. And the great thing with perception for me is the things that have helped me to change the most, or the energy that has helped me to change the most and move out of my comfort zone, is laughter. Laughing at the things I take far too seriously. And then the things that I don't take seriously enough that kind of get me into trouble, to hone in a little bit on it and take it a little bit more seriously. Like when I used to maybe party too much, in high school or whatever. It wasn't with the normal scene. I drifted off to my own sort of little world of escapism. And I just had to start taking it seriously. And then there's things that I took far too seriously, like the state of the planet and everything going on and all the mission stuff. And I learned to kind of like just lighten the load a little bit and just, just have a different perspective that like I said before, isn't going to crush me. And I think a great way to really work with this is when we're in relationships and we have to face our insecurities and our fears. Just the way that, different things can come up and, make us feel, somewhat uncomfortable because of something that we've gone through in the past that was difficult, that caused us terror or pain. The perspective, can be, there's wisdom to be gained from it, and all adversity and pain or suffering is really on its way to like a great epiphany that, can serve us in the long run. And to give ourselves the opportunity to find that wisdom so that when we re-experience something, we don't go back into the same perspective or feel like a victim to it or feel like we're, locked in something that we can't get out of. We make sense out of it. And also, things about guilt and shame and regrets, we have to figure that if we realize that something didn't serve us, just that simple revelation alone is a huge victory. And we need to just cut ourselves a lot of slack, too, because we have all sorts of dark technologies and manipulations that are trying to affect our behaviors. So, perspective is the one thing I play with the most. I shuffle my cards all the time, and I get an idea of what my perspective is and what is going on around me and what's going on within me, and then I make the necessary adjustments with the intention of reaching like a much sort of more beneficial place in myself.
Yeah.
And that's how I work energy in the outer world, too. And perception is everything. We are creators, and so our creative imagination can be haunted or it can be liberated, and it can move into the territory of even doing the impossible, the things that people say can't be done. The vastness is like unending, but we're so limited by the traumas and the things that we've gone through, which is all part of the false flags of this game that's being played, so that we are afraid to progress. We're afraid to fall in love again. We're afraid of our own power, and we're afraid of the future because of, the wars and all the propaganda. And, we don't have to operate from those instructions. So perception.
You say something honestly really powerful as well, and something that I practice quite a bit is I laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh, and things that I would take very seriously and get my feelings hurt over, I usually just chuckle. And actually one of my greatest practice tools for the longest time was social media. Because, I know, Laura, you've experienced this on a large scale. You post something or a video of you gets posted, and there's tons and tons and tons of comments. And I know, Sierra, you've gone through it as well. And what I would do is all those arguments that people would try to get me or goat me into, I would just realize where they were at, and then I would laugh, not at them, but I would laugh at the fact that there was a time when I would have been doing that, what they were doing. And, of course, I know there's also people in there that are trolling and just trying to start fights and stuff like that. But even them, from that perspective, I've used social media as such a great tool to find peace in myself, because I just realized that I'm not going there.
Right.
And I know you practice that as well, Laura. So it's like, and Sierra, I know you practice that as well. And so it becomes this great tool of, I'm just not going to get engaged with, not my circus, not my monkey, so to speak. So I think laughter is a very powerful tool to really transmute things really fast. I don't know, Sierra, if you practice with that as well, with laughter and just kind of seeing the irony in things. And
absolutely. It's really great that you bring that up, because what I, when the tools, one of the things, and I think everybody uses different ways to the same source, but we get triggered by certain things, and we have certain patterns. And when things trigger us, because sometimes we don't realize that we've been triggered until about 10 steps down the road. So what I do is, my first indicator is when I'm triggered or I'm starting to get hooked into something, is I lose my sense of humor and I get too serious on it. So that to me is like, whoa, wait a minute. Let's step back for a second and look at this from a different perspective, and set myself aside and see the irony in some of the things that happen sometimes, and allow myself to laugh it off, and allow myself to just, when I have the worst, when I'm really, really challenged by someone or something that they've said, I either shift, I go from, getting into my laughter, I shift into my compassion, and my compassion of seeing where they are, or seeing that they're really wounded, and that's where I can, disengage. But if something's engaging me, I'm being triggered into something, and I lose my sense of humor, that's when I know, wait a minute, whoa, my perspective is skewed. It's in a place that is not friendly in my own ego mind or shadow self, and now I need to step back into the laughter, into the, the more, I like to see things as visual waves of frequency, and when something happens, and I can almost even visually see my energy start to become erratic, and when I laugh, it becomes that more resonant frequency, which is just a really up and down and up and down. It's a wave form that is easier to deal with. So, yes, I agree. That's my first indicator. When I've been triggered on something, my sense of humor goes away. So that to me is, find that sense of humor, find that laughter, and find the perspective that gives you the freedom to laugh about something.
Yeah, absolutely. And Laura, you'd mentioned about relationships earlier, about having a significant other and stuff like that. And I had to chuckle, because I used to jokingly say I have 5 best friends, and all 5 of them I considered myself having 5 husbands, and 2 of them Sierra actually does a show with, and they would challenge me, all 5 of them, all the time, as far as I can tend to be super on the codependent, trying to always protect everybody, and I'd take on that persona, trying to protect all 5 of them, always doing that. And I would actually catch myself and laugh at myself all the time, like, no, I don't have to go there with them. I don't have to protect them. They're big boys. They can take care of themselves. And if I didn't catch it, what I would do is I'd find my throat would swell up and start closing off, and that whole, so that to me I was becoming disempowered as I was trying to be codependent. And then I'd laugh at myself and kind of go, and not in a making fun of myself, but in a, oh wow, I really went there, didn't I? So
yeah, totally.
Great perspective. So yeah, it's really, I think what you're talking about with relationships, it really helps us, switch our perspective. They're the mirror back to us, so to speak.
And that's why they can be so challenging when you think about it, the amount of relationships that don't end up working out. I mean, I think it's nice to meet each other halfway a little bit if there's certain things that are just, that are a part of a programming, like, just saying like rude things, about the opposite sex while you're hanging out with your mate. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one. I mean, there's behavior adjustments and there's deal breakers and there's things that, people will need to work on and, compromises and subtle adjustments to bring about a better foundation and comfort zone, because that, to me, is what love is, to really be caring and compassionate about some of the stuff that we're healing. But then after a certain point, it's like, there might still be stuff. And it amazes me, because even if I have that foundation, it's like I still get triggered, and yeah, I'm so grateful that I'm able to laugh and sort of see the larger perspective. And it's like, is this really a big deal? And like, it's such a minute thing. But what's funny is I feel the pain before my mind catches up with it. So I know it's like, wow, this is a really deep and buried wound, that it wasn't even a thought or a belief that got triggered. It's actually my body reacted, and then I have to catch up with myself, like, what the heck was that? And then I have to kind of go into that pain and ask myself, and even like relive the conversation a little bit and look at it again. And I'm like, awesome, this is an opportunity to heal and transmute, even though I feel very crippled, and it's like really hard to laugh. And then, the thing is also, I find if a trigger happens and it lingers for longer than a day or two, then it's worth bringing up and talking about. Most triggers that are harmless, that might cause the person to want to react and talk about, I like to, encourage people to give it a day. If it's still there when you wake up in the morning and it lingers all day, then maybe, bring it up for discussion. But if it's every trigger, that has to be worked out and has to be addressed, they might not even be that big a deal. And sometimes it's a little bit much to always having, to have to process and interrogate and ask questions. And so what I've decided to do a long time ago is give it a day or two, and if it doesn't go away, then maybe it's worth bringing up. And if it does go away, then it wasn't that big a deal. But the question always has to be, is this coming from an inner wound, or was this person being out of line?
Absolutely. Well, believe it or not, we are down to 3 minutes of this show, so it's kind of flew by pretty fast. Sierra, did you have anything that you wanted to add on before we kind of wrap up?
I just loved everything that Laura said, and it's true, being back into relationship again for 2 years after being single for 5. And I just giggled. Yes, sometimes I just have to let it go for a day, because, if something's triggering you, it's not necessarily about that person. It's really probably about what your perspective is and the wounding and the patterns and cycles. So I agree 100% with what Laura was talking about, and I practice that. So it's great.
And it's great when you catch yourself in the moment, because when I realize, hey, that person's not going anywhere, you can talk about it in 2 days, it takes away sort of that survival response where the body kind of goes into almost like sometimes I even shake, and I'm like, wait a second, just take a deep breath. You don't have to bring it up. This might not be the right time. Give it a day or two. You have plenty of time, and it's not going to go anywhere if it needs to be discussed. But give yourself a chance to see if you can heal it on your own. And it's such a great revelation in the moment when I want to just say, hey, let's just look at this and work it out. Because then I'm like, wow, we're going to always be working stuff out if I take that approach.
Right, and you want to enjoy your time with that person too. You don't always want to be so.
Processing.
Wonderful. So everybody, Laura and Sierra's website are down in the comments, and definitely go check out their websites and go out there. And Sierra, did you want to take maybe 10 seconds to talk about your GoFundMe real quick?
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm raising some money because I would like to work with a bunch of professionals in the field, because I'm really hoping that this particular work that I'm doing right now could be of service. And so I'm using professionals that, of course, takes funds. And so I've got a GoFundMe at GoFundMe.com/Sierra, SIERRA, dash, SBOOK. And I give a lot of really great incentives, some work that I have to offer you for your donation or your time. And I really appreciate if you can't donate to just go ahead and share with other people. But check out everything I'm doing there. It's written up pretty in depth on the GoFundMe page. And I just really, really appreciate this time with the both of you today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and till the next time, Laura and Sierra, you guys have a wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.